right, these will be notes for day 7, which is factoring by grouping. So if you take a look at your notes, the first equation they give you is 20x to the 4th plus 10x squared. And this is just a warm-up. This is just to remind you how to factor out a greatest common factor. So you look at the first term and you look at the second term. And first, just look at the numbers. What is the greatest common factor between 20 and 10? Or another way to ask that question is, what are they both divisible by? Well, I can divide them both by 10, so I can factor out a 10. The next thing I do is I look at my variables. So I have an x to the 4th and an x squared. You ask yourself the same question. What is the greatest common factor between the two of those, or what is the largest number of x's that I can divide out? And I can divide out 2 x's, so x squared. So this is the greatest common factor between those. I'm going to put my parentheses. If this is a plus sign, then there'll be a plus sign in between. If that was a minus sign, then this would be a minus sign. And now I have to say, well, what is 20 divided by 10? Well, that would be 2. And what is x to the 4th divided by x squared? Remember that you subtract the exponents, so that would be x squared. What is 10 divided by 10? Well, that would be 1. And x squared divided by x squared is also 1, so it would be 1 times 1, so that's just 1. So this here would be the same thing as this question here, but it would have the greatest common factor factored out. Let's see now how we would do, though, if we had more than just 2 terms. So the first thing you do here is you have 20x to the 3rd minus 12x squared minus 15x plus 9. So the first step they always tell you to do is to look to see, is there a greatest common factor that you can take out of here? Well, let's look at the numbers, 20, 12, 15, and 9. Well, I could take a 2 out of them, but I can't take a 2 out of there, so that wouldn't work. And I don't have an x on the 9, so I can't take an x out. So in this case, there's no greatest common factor I can take out. Then the second thing you do is you break it into pairs. So I'm just going to rewrite the equation really quickly. And the first thing you do is you just take a look at the first 2 numbers, and you do the same thing that we did on the first exercise. You're going to say, is there a greatest common factor that I can take out between 20 and 12? Well, I can take a 2 out, but that wouldn't be the greatest common factor. I have to think of the biggest number I could take out. Well, I could also take a 4 out. So I could take a 4 out of there. And between x to the 3rd and x squared, I could take out an x squared. So if I take 20 and divide it by 4, I'll get a 5. And if I have x third divided by x squared, I'll get an x. This is a minus sign. This will be a minus sign. 12 divided by 4 will give me a 3. And x squared divided by x squared is just 1. Then the next thing I do is I take a look at the next 2 pairs of numbers. These 2 here. And if this is a minus sign, then this will be a minus sign. And then I do exactly the same thing. I take a look at it and I say, all right, what can I take out of between 15, and 9? Well, I could take a 3 out of those. And then this has an x and this doesn't have an x, so I can't take an x out. Well, 15 divided by 3 will give me a 5, and then I still have that x there. 9 divided by 3 will give me a 3. And I just ignore this sign here for a moment. Oh, wait, that's not true. I ignore this sign because if this is negative, and in order for this to be plus, a negative times a negative would be a positive. So I have to make sure that in order to get a positive, that if this is negative, this is also negative. The other thing that you notice is that this parentheses here is exactly the same as this parentheses here. That has to happen in order for this to work. If you do not have the same thing in both these parentheses, either you've done something incorrectly or this is not solvable by grouping. Not everything is solvable by grouping, just like not everything is factorable. So what this tells you is the stuff that you took out is your first factor. So 4x squared minus 3 is your first factor. And the stuff that's in parentheses, 5x minus 3, is your second factor. And now you factored that particular polynomial. All right, I'm going to stop here. I will put another video up with another example if you want to see more.